Heyo everybody, it's Johnny5 Alive here, and welcome back to some more Project PlanCo. Today we're going to be hopping over the camel to the Magica Mundi, is what we're calling the fantasy area. Okay, Magica Mundi. We have a lot of blueprints that are finished in this area, all but 4 or 5. I really wanted to place in the actual entrance here today. Looking at the code here, it was F09, and it is assigned to an expert builder by the name of Strake. Not yet ready. It's still assigned. That is quite okay. I don't expect these builds to be done so soon this early, but I'm just going to work from the top down. So what do we got here? The first build's by batch. And I noticed that 2 of the builds that I have here today are by batch. So I guess batch jumped in to help out. Maybe the plots weren't being assigned quick enough, or maybe batch was just feeling creative and wanted to participate. No qualms with that whatsoever. So our first build of... Wait, what? Did I not subscribe to the first one? I did not. Okay, so the first build of the day will be F02. Where's F02? Where does this begin and where does it end? F02. All right, this one here. So I'm assuming, because Batch sets the rules, Batch is the creator, that this should go in smoothly. And we'll leave the volume cube here just so you can see. By the legend themselves, I still have all the Western blueprints subscribed because I'm doing these back to back. So the legend himself should fit the volume cube quite nicely. They set the rules. They should know how to follow them quite well. And now we get to judge one of Batch's builds. And I have complete confidence that it's going to be amazing. All right, that one slid in quite easily. Let's take a look at this. The first build of the day, the first build of the fantasy area. You can see the volume cube there. And as I mentioned, sometimes it's okay for things to peek out or go over as long as they're not blocking sightlines too much. And Batch has stated that too in our previous episodes and podcasts, if you will. And yeah, it's peeking over, but it's generally filling that volume cube quite nicely. We delete that and boom, it fills the space. Now, is there a volume cube for this station? I'm assuming it's one of those, so I could probably get rid of that, and we could take a look at the build. Looking very fantasy, using those fantasy pieces, a mixture between the medieval house building style mixed in with a little bit of that castle. I like that staircase there leading up into it. Little castle bits on the side here. Half castle, half medieval building. Fits and looks really good for fantasy. We got a decorated upper balcony area here to peer over. Some nice little planters and stuff up there. Some windows, a doorway, making it all feel realistic and believable. Cute little windows there on the front. Very tall, peaky roof pieces on this one. And it looks absolutely legendary. Don't expect anything less from a legend builder such as Batch. I quite like the depth of this. You got these little bits here, a little bit of like a crawl space and overhang from the building, just to create like a little bit of an undulation and depth there, which gives it quite a nice look. And also because your build piece, like when you're building with these roof pieces, your roof is kind of predetermined, right? So if you look at how this lines up with the neighbor, and you use these roof pieces, you have no choice but to hang over this far. So Batch was put in this interesting position where, okay, I'm hanging over, but they brought it back in with this little divot here, but then also brought it back out with this staircase here. Creates for a lot of interesting angles and dynamic shapes, and that to me is a legend build. I look at this from all angles. It's not, even though the cube itself was like 2 boxes, it does no longer feel boxy by any means. It has a lot of depth. It's using cylindrical pieces, it's using castle pieces, medieval pieces, lots of variety and interesting things to look at with this build here today. Picturesque, knocking it out of the park. It's perfect. Really good job on this one today. Batch. And did they say anything on their workshop? PlanCo project, little house built on an old castle walls. And that's it. All right. So Batch participating, apparently couldn't get enough of the project. You know, all the crazy polishing and the actual planning of the plots and stuff. Batch just couldn't sit by and wait any longer, had to assign one to themselves, and in fact assigned two, and created a very nice build. But sitting there, when you take a plot and you go, okay, I got 500 pieces to work with, or whatever, how many did this one have exactly? This was an advanced plus build, and Batch took it, and it was 250 pieces. I'm assuming they did it properly, because Batch is the one person to always be like, I care about piece count. And let's see how accurately they got their piece count. I'm very, very curious. 222 went under. Maybe he's just tried to flex a little and show us how it's done. When I give you 250, I expect legend quality for 250. And playing by the rules is Batch, and doing it well. Very good job. Okay, well, F03 should be the neighbor, which it is right here, will be our next build of the day. And this was by V2 Raven, a name I do not recognize. Raven. Let's see. I'm going to go to Raven's workshop real quick. Anything from them that I've recognized? The Drunken Sailor. No, they just do a few little shops here and there. No parks or anything. No coaster spotlights. So a fairly newish builder to the community. It says on the workshop that they did 96 pieces. They had 150 to work with. They just so happened to be next to the Piece Master Batch, and they're like, okay, I better not go over, and they in fact went under. Interesting. So good job to you. You got Batch lurking by, judging you, and not to go over. So where is F03 amongst all this craziness? Here we go. This little guy. All right. Well, let's line this up and see how it goes. As I'm placing this, I can see there's multiple alignment cubes in here. So I don't know which one I should be lining up. There's kind of like a bunch. Well, seeing as the balcony kind of goes into the neighbor, I'm a little bit concerned. See, this is crashing, and there's these like bushes here. So whatever build goes here, there's going to be some crashing going on. So no matter what, I'm going to have to pull this build out and go against what the alignment cube says, which is not too problematic. But then on the backside, there'll be like a gap. Yeah, I don't know. Not the most. Yeah, see, it really depends. Let's see if there's any notes here. Batch says for his build, final polish, check if empty parts covered by neighbors. And if they were talking about their build here, I don't think that'll be a problem from Batch, but this one here has no notes, so it's up to me to determine how this is going to go in. I think, as I mentioned, sliding it away from the neighbor, assuming that there's going to be a wall here, we don't want that wall crashing into whatever doodad this is. So it's okay that it overlaps onto the path a little bit, because it's just a path, and no harm, no foul. My only concern is this kind of alleyway here. So if we delete the cube now, whoa, it is tiny. Okay. Yes. So when you look at things like in cube world, gray block world, and you think about how sightlines are going to be and how this area is going to hug you a little bit as you come through here, right? All these buildings kind of creating clusters of noise. When you have a cube like this and it goes under its volume cube by a large amount, it does create some dead space, some negative space, some openings. Depending on what we see here, it might be okay. But if their backside is like kind of naked and bare, it does raise some concerns. Now, what can be resolved is by, taking some trees, some nature, and things like that, and putting it in between, right? And that could be quite okay. So nothing that a little bit of nature can't fill. And then with our alleyway here, you just put a couple rocks and stuff in there. Not too bad. not too bad. So I think the placement of this looks pretty okay. It seems to be filling. There's no overlap. The balcony's not, you know, crashing into anything. Now this overhang here shouldn't get in the way now that we've slid it over. So if I delete the original cube, you can see here that we're like an inch to the right. And that's the only way I could get this to not smash into the neighbor, unless I pushed it back. So that would have been an option. But I think that's the best decision that I could have made. Yeah, so even when we're looking at Lockjaw's Landing, bringing it over to the right didn't really intrude on that park entrance. It's still kind of like centralized, not impeding in any way. So I think we're good. Yeah, there were multiple cubes in that build for some reason. So if we hit play, do we have these animatronics on loop? Stationary. So I know Batch didn't want this. Play every X seconds. I don't know, 30 seconds? Actually, I'm just gonna keep it on loop. Now, oh, I love it. Okay, I'll stop. I have some mixed feelings about this. I always just speak from the heart. I'm very honest, and sometimes to a fault. You know, sometimes you guys say like, be nice to these builders. They're new builders or whatever. Or sometimes I have certain critiques and things that I want to say that maybe some people may or may not disagree with. And you know, that is the role that I signed myself to by being lead of this project, that I will give my honest thoughts and see what you guys, if you agree, disagree, and if, you know, if there's a major issue that I see, I'll point it out and we can change it, iterate on it, or, you know, resolve it. Now, with a build like this, I have some mixed feelings here, because this stage isn't really fantasy. Having these singers, what is this piece called? The Vintage Quartet. This is in fact part of the Vintage DLC. Should Vintage go in fantasy? And then I start to think to myself, well, not necessarily this creator's fault, but maybe an oversight on my own, is we never really had a vintage area in this park. We don't. And it's like, well, I'm scratching my head. Now I'm actually kind of curious. If we go to PlanCoaster, I'm going to quickly go to their store page and see how many DLCs do they actually have for this game. So we have Ghostbusters, Classic Rides, Magnificent Rides, World's Fair, Vintage, Studios, Adventure, Spooky, Knight Rider, Back to the Future, and Quick Draw. So yeah, we weren't really, like I said, if you build an adventure area, we want you to use most of the pieces from the adventure pack, right? When we build in the spooky area, we want you to use pieces from the spooky pack. We did a whole World's Fair thing. Like we have Germany, France, Italy, like China. We have all these different World's Fair areas. What is vintage and where does it go? We could have done a vintage boardwalk of some sort, sure. But at the same time, I look at vintage and studios as accents, right? They accent what you're already doing in the game. Nobody really makes a whole vintage park unless they're doing a boardwalk theme park. All that being said, looking at the project itself, I've oftentimes said that this project is about representing the entirety of the game. And we've hit on all the major themes, all the major characters. And when we look at vintage, there are no vintage shops. There are no vintage characters. So there are nothing in this realm Like everything that we kind of built on, elaborated on, down to the camel. The camel is part of the Dune Delights, the Moroccan themed area, which is part of the World's Fair. When they gave us vintage, it was just fluff. It was just add-on. It's just little bits of accenting pieces that'll help you elaborate your parks and make them have more vintage style areas if you wanted to do like a, you know, something more vintage. I think we could have used some of those vintage pieces for maybe our cinema, our theater. You know, we could have done something there. And because we don't have a vintage area at all, where could you include it to accent something, right? And I think the only place that I think I mean, those singing quartets could probably work quite okay in Western, maybe. Other than that, though, I feel like it's fine. So this is where I step back and go, okay, well, it may not fit fantasy perfectly. We have not included them anywhere, and there is nothing else vintage. And the fun playfulness of this here kind of works. We have these like crazy rides over here with the Fantastic Hatter, and then you have the vintage quartet, which they all got their fancy little hats. It kind of will work in the end, and I think it's quite fine. In fact, maybe, let's see what Batch said. Did he ask them to include the vintage guys? Fantasy Town, set to static, which they did. I don't see anything about that, no. So let's go forward. Yeah, okay. The only thing that I feel maybe be a little bit off is the red, white, and blue, the America theme. I feel like America works best in Western America, and over here for our, you know, reimagined America diner with our Just Ribbon character. So for me, maybe what I'll do later on when we see, maybe I'll just like even do it now where we look at our Fantastic Hatter and we're playing off these kind of like colors here. So if we go to our color palette and we get like this tealish cyan color, okay, maybe not the best there. We got red, kind of pink, and cyan. So if I go with a color palette like this, right, suddenly it fits a little better, in my opinion. And it plays on this guy just a little bit. So when we have this over here, and I'm assuming the builder that's building this ride is incorporating some of the characteristics and color palettes of our character here, and then we transition over here, it starts to blend and feel a little bit more the same, right? And we get those fun colors from this character over here, incorporated over there. Actually just realized that the yellow on the shirt, maybe I could grab this and go with like more of a pink. Yeah, that might work. Yeah, something like that. Has more of that fantasy color vibes than it does the America red, white, and blue. Now, while I think the build itself can be improved, I actually kind of, this is kind of cute. You used a hat as a chimney top, and it gives it this kind of Willy Wonka feel to it. It's kind of hilarious. Yeah, while I think the build could be slightly improved and improved upon to make it feel like, you know, we have these, the way Batch did this overhanging roof piece, we have little support pieces here. There's cross beams and stuff, all these like wooden bits there. Tying the trim down with making a little bit broader, fatter, wider. A lot of those little details are a little bit lost in the roof bits of this. From the ground level perspective, I don't think it's that noticeable. I think the one thing I would probably change, as this builder only had 150 pieces, but they only used 95 of those, would have been used those last bits to dress up that roof. Now, I think it ended up working out quite okay, and for a beginner build, I think it's quite good. Using the quartets on the front, not really incorporating that into the rest of the building. When I build things, and I think like thematically, if this is kind of like where they perform, and this is actually their house or whatever, right? Why is there what's going on in here? Am I supposed to push the terrain down? Oh my goodness. Well, because of the pathing, we can't really adjust that, but there's a chair and a clown face in there. That's kind of funny. All right, well, I guess you could kind of see it through the window, so it works. But yeah, if this is their house and this is where they live, maybe some of that kind of silliness could have been added to that of the build. if you know what I mean. So we have this like Caribbean fantasy amalgamation covered with foliage, but the personality of the quartets, the vintageness and the fun fantasy-ness of the hats and the singing isn't really incorporated back into the building. So how could you take this and incorporate a little bit more of that? Whether you do it through the floral, whether you do it through some ribbonry, some dress up, something like that to bring it all in and tie it back together is what I would like to see. So if there's a way to dress that up, if anyone has any ideas, and I'll update it later. All right, let's move on to the next build of the day. F04, this gigantic tower by, again, Batch. Batch coming in hot with 2 fantasy builds, taking some of the big boys here. Only 250 pieces for such a massive build. And I am curious, before we go and place it, let's go drop it off in the corner of the world here and check the part count on this. I'm not doing this for everybody, but 260, but then there's the setup cube. So used pretty much exactly what they were given, or what they gave themselves in this case. Kind of funny. And do the same thing on the workshop page. Shaky tower. What did the last guy say? Nothing. 96 pieces was it. Okay, shaky tower. Oh, you gave me the alignment cube for the neighbor. I have been deleting these cubes, and I just realized that I shouldn't be deleting the cubes. I should actually just leave them in case I ask or request for any updates, changes, and things like that. Or if somebody says, hey, I changed something about my build, can you replace it? I won't have an alignment cube. So going forward, and just kind of like a magic discovery or mental note to myself from this kind of thought process, is I will leave the cubes. So I'm assuming that because this lined up, this is pretty much lined up with the old one. So I have that cube back. If you want to give me 50 decorative pieces that go on top of this build, change this build and liven it up and tie it together with your quartets. And I believe this color palette's quite matching to that of the Fantastic Hatter. So if you want to incorporate that somehow into this build, then we can go ahead and just boop, throw in a little 50-piece blueprint polish. If not, that's fine. You can just leave it the way it is. And if Batch has any ideas, wants to play around with that, they can add something in there. At this moment, I'm not too concerned about it, but I'm always willing to give someone the option to rethink things. So this is the shaky tower, almost like a white cider style build to this, and also kind of gives me a little bit of like those Stormwind City World of Warcraft vibes. Whenever you see like medieval builds like this with that blue trim, always makes me feel like Stormwind City vibes from World of Warcraft. The shaky tower, everything's a little bit crooked, leaning to the sides, a little bit crazy, and that's what you would come to expect from a fantasy style build. These roof pieces are actually using the spooky pack. And again, a lot of people looked at the spooky as an accent pack as well. Gives you extra doodads to mix and match and combine. Apparently, a lot of the buildings in France have rooftops like this, and a lot of people use these for France. I think it's France. Was it France? Thought it was France. Yeah, people use them for French style builds. The spooky France. I was making a joke about that. So yeah, apparently a lot of the buildings in France use some of those pieces provided by the spooky pack. And that was what was nice about Frontiers additional packs. What was missing from the game? What can we add? How do we bring something in to give people what they need to build with, but then tie it together as a thematical pack that we can sell with a theme? And a lot of the packs, like the vintage, for example, nobody actually just took them and said, I'm going to make a vintage park, but instead like, oh, I could really use the lights from the vintage to add to the Christmas area that I'm building or whatever, what have you. So the crooked build there, I love it. It's great. And now that we have that in next to this build, it's quite a nice little composition. This little area is developing quite nicely. Another great build from Batch, doing it right on par with 250 pieces, which is quite impressive because it's like, would I add any additional pieces? Maybe the concrete bottom could use something there. Maybe if you had a few extra pieces, but you're so stubborn that you're like, no, I'm not going over. showing how it's done. All right, great. So what do we got going on next in line? I got to do the builder signs as well. Placed in park, placed in park, placed in park. We are now currently at 13% in the park total. There's a sign right over here, Jeffrey Wynn Prince. Let's bring this on over to Batchy Batch here and rotate this in. Batch. Done. And what's nice about this is you made 2 builds, so I just have to duplicate this one and come drop it over here. We're gonna tuck it down in here. Boom, done. And this build here, where can I sneak it? Probably just on the side. Yeah, just tuck it up against the wall on the side here. And this was V2 Raven. Done. Great. Next up is F05. All right, this one right in the center here. We're tying the whole area together. When they all come in and I work my way from the top down, they generally tend to be all within the same vicinity because Batch kind of numbered them that way. Now, should I be maybe doing them in a different order, planning it differently? I don't know, but this is the way that I decided to tackle it. But I'm hoping, and I think the next one would be a hero piece. Oh, it's the Fantastic Hatter, and it's currently assigned to Augie, and it is not done yet. But maybe I can grab one. I think there's like a carousel or something, so we'll check that out. I think this is it. The person didn't give me a plot name. So what did they say here? Created for the Channel 5 gaming project PlanCo, this little castle is made for the fantasy area. It does form one bigger unit with my scenic ride creation carousel. Wait a hot second here. Who made this? Lucky Dude. So Lucky Dude has F06 and F07. So that's a carousel ride skin. Very cool. Okay, I was just gonna say, like, this episode needs a hero piece, and we're gonna get one. We're getting one. So between this build and the next one, we combine them together and we get one kind of massive plot. Seems that we saw that in the past already with the Madman taking 3, and apparently this will be kind of a running trend where, because we had so many plots this time around, we let people take a couple, a handful. So some people are getting creative and tying builds together. So while this looks unfinished, that is intentional, and it is a part of the greater kind of build. So we might as well just place them both and take a look at them combined. Very cool. And because the ride was already placed by Batch and the queue was set, pretty sure the queue, that's the exit, right? So the queue should be set. I shouldn't have to actually set anything up, which was great planning from Batch's part. Place that. Now we can go ahead and delete the setup guide there, as well as the cube there. They both seem to fit the volume cube quite nicely. And holy moly, let's turn the carousel on. So yeah, like something like the carousel, do we have music for this? Double Deck Classic. Let's put it in test mode. So like we could go with vintage music on this as well. This is the classic music. Yeah, I'm not crazy about that. It's quite loud too. Let me turn that down. Let's see. I gotta turn reshade off. So if we look, they added music in for vintage. Let's... We could also just add the quartet to this one. I kind of like this one. This one's fun too. Wait, what just happened? Oh, I have to hit apply. Let's listen to this one. Let's go with that. It's a little silly. We're in the Mad Hatter district. No, that's perfect. And then back here, we got the quartet. That is one thing that we've been kind of, like, I gotta be mindful of like how loud that is. It's probably a little bit on the loud side, but I want the park to have a lot of audio. And we've already incorporated the Bitter Elegance as a partner using some of their music that you will hear on the coasters. But we have to like make sure that they're not too loud as you're going through certain areas. But if we go down to like Morocco, for example, right? You can hear the Moroccan music, and we hop over to Germany. You can hear the music over here. Same with like Italy. So each of the areas have some music. We have to come up with something for sci-fi. I believe something fun could be done here. Same with some of the other areas as well. Hey, wait a second. What is this rocket? Where did this rocket come from? That's great. I don't remember seeing that before. That's hilarious. All these fun little surprises Batch keeps putting in for me. Little Easter eggs and what have you. So yeah, this is great. Back to my point on the audio, I want to make sure that the park isn't so noisy and there's not a lot of crossover. So you should only hear this carousel music in this area, but I want something for, you know, the main boarding stations. Same goes for like the Miss Ellie. We need some Planet Bluegrass or something that you can hear in the western area, and I'll come up with some stuff, some final touches, something I will mess around with Batch, something that I would like to put a personal touch on, just to do a walkthrough of the park and go like, is there any dead air? Is there any dead space where we're not really hearing much in certain of the areas? And what can we do to amplify that just a little bit so that there is some ambience throughout all of the park? One of the biggest critiques that I have doing these park spotlights and what have you is, like the ambience is, I point it out when it's good, and when it's completely missing, I also point it out. And some people nail it, some people get a good mixture, and some people have some dead space and a lot of ambience. But then you have areas like this in the city. We have the car traffic, we have the noise pollution. Right? You could hear noise. And once the go-karts are going and the song's playing for that, it should be pretty bustling. And the final park spotlight that we do for this park, I want to make sure that as I'm going through here, I'm fully immersed everywhere that I go, hearing that music. So with that being said, I think having a song for the carousel is quite good. All right, let's take a look at the build. I love the colors here. Seems like everybody's kind of choosing some bluish colors. We had red, white, and blue over here. We have Mad Hatter using a bit of a cyan and magenta for the color palette there. But again, using that like kind of bluish color, giving me the Stormwind vibes. Also matching very good with your neighbor there with Batch. This was the kind of the triangle strange build that we had here, but actually tying it together with this castle gate was quite clever. So good job to Lucky Dude for quickly grabbing both these builds and then finding a way to incorporate them together, because I actually much prefer the way that this turned out. It's quite nice. Princess Amelie Go Around. Amelie Go Around. Why is the A not... Why can't I edit this? Is it the wrong sign? There's probably a sign wedged in there that I'm not selecting. Whatever. It looks a little strange to me. It says Amelie. Princess Amelie Go Around. Might just be a spacing issue with the font. Love this adorable little fairy. Yeah, this has all the fantasy vibes. Look how immersive and pretty this is. I like the little garden there. The thatched roofs. I'm glad to see out of all these builds that we finally... I gotta pause it. The frame rate is dying here. Yeah, it's good to see some thatched roofs make it into the fantasy area, especially for the center of the area. When we're coming into this park entrance here, we get those fantasy build tops there, and that's looking great. And then you get the more castle-like structures behind it. This bit of castle tied in with the bit of village, very smart, and just so happens to kind of go perfectly with what Batch has done here. I don't know if you guys planned that, but there seems to be a lot of happy accidents with this park, and I love it. Absolutely love it. All right, looking at my recording, we're at 46 minutes, but with editing, probably slightly less. How many did I place today so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we could probably squeeze in one more. So let me move this to... Now, because Lucky Dude did both of these builds, probably okay if I just do one builder sign right here on the back side, and that should be more than fine. Lucky Dude, great job on this build. Really like this. In fact, I think this is my favorite build of the day because it uses two builds, combines them together in a clever way, ties it all together with this archway, uses a mixture of the castle pieces, the thatch pieces, but it's also a ride skin. So it's a bit of our hero build. Great garden work here. I didn't even actually walk the queue, the Amelie go around. It is very detailed. Like, I don't know how many pieces you were given. Let me see here. It says 1,000 for the actual ride skin, but then the other one added on had 300. So between the two of them, you add a total of 1,300 pieces. Oh, this is quite clever here. There's a wagon on the road to stop the queue. And it's all integrated in a way where I can barely see the path or make out the path, but this road kind of ties through to the back. Very immersive. I really like the way that that turned out. It looks amazing. Yeah, definitely my favorite build of the day, but at the same time, it is pretty much the most epic build because it combines two of them together and it's the centerpiece of this whole area. And it's not too tall, it's not too intrusive. All the builds around it that we're gonna see here, it accents and kind of builds upon this area, leaving it open, but still looking really, really nice. Love it. So let me go ahead and grab a new one that I did not subscribe to. Oh, maybe I did subscribe to another one. F08 right here. And this one had a piece number of 200. What do they say on the workshop? The Batch and Breakfast is a fantasy-themed bed and breakfast dedicated to a Joker named Batch. A Joker. And this is created by Red Panda 2110. So let's see if we can find this. Project PlanCo F08. Immediately looking at this, it's not quite filling the volume cube, right? There's probably about 15% left. Is that a big deal? We'll find out. We'll find out. The batch and breakfast. I actually do appreciate people recoloring their cubes. I actually mentioned that in one of my episodes that I was like, oh, maybe you guys should recolor your cubes. And I just edited that out because I was like, I could just recolor the cube that's placed there. And then I keep forgetting to do it or just don't really care because I can line up the two colored ones quite easily. But when you do have one that's colored and one that's not, it's definitely easier to see that it's not perfect. But I think just 1 or 2 pixels within is more than fine. So yeah, I'm gonna leave the cubes in for now and we'll just go and delete them all later. And in case we need to do any touch-ups, changes, or people want to change their mind on something, then we still have the original cubes there for later. Holy good googly moogly, look at that. The integration was are these plants included in your blueprint? Let me find out. This is what the blueprint looked like. No, they were not. So the backside that we're looking at here was this, which you did decorate, but you didn't go over the top. And I feel like some of this garden work here, oh, Batch grouped it all. Interesting. I think we could probably juggle some stuff around because these little lanterns kind of poke out here. I like the way that looks. So I kind of want to like sink the tree in or, you know, just move it around ever so slightly so that we can see that finer detail that the creator has put into their build here. Yeah. And so we can see some of those windows. I like it. It looks really cool. The back side of this has a little bit of detail, but not a lot. So it's probably okay that we can reveal some of that. That looks good. I like the lighting on that, even though we're not at night yet. Wow, great little build. I think the negative space not filling your cube was fine because the way you've structured the walls, the rooftops, and all that, it fits quite nicely. I think what we could do later is just add a few weeds, take some of these, you know, and paint a little bit, just so there's not a harsh line between the two. Maybe what could have been done, maybe I can, yeah, this is actually not a bad idea. If I take the 2 floor pieces that you had, add them together. Oh, they're 2 different groups. So I was thinking like, yeah, if I bring this out and then bring it up just ever so slightly and then do the same with this, that kind of cleans up the transition between the path, right? And I think that's a little bit nicer. Maybe I brought this out too much, but either way, I like that little bit of separation between the path and the building. Feels a little less naked, feels a little bit more natural, feels a little bit more integrated. So that's probably the only change I would make there. That's easy to do myself. Build looks amazing. I mean, wow, there's a lot going on here. A lot of great designs with the roof. First person to kind of go with these like wooden log pieces that to me feel a little bit more on the alpine side than anything, and I suspect we'll probably see a little bit more use of them over there in the Christmas area. But alpine, Christmas, the areas kind of combined. I feel like it's very fitting. It works pretty well here. As I mentioned in the previous episode with Western, there's so many different pieces of wood in this game that it's almost impossible to cohesively tie all of the themes together and all the build sets and make, you know, all the buildings match. And most people don't intuitively know which pieces which use what. Like, is this Caribbean piece, should I use it for a fantasy building? But fantasy Caribbean is also pirate. Why is there a piece down here? Oh my god, what the hell? What the hell is this? Oh my god, this is the train. Wow. But yeah, there's a lot to what my point is, a lot of to be deciphered through these pieces and how you should use them, and everybody's going to be doing it differently. And what you came up with for this build in particular is really quite nice. I like this. There's a lot of interesting pieces going on here. It's very noisy, but in a very fantasy fun feeling way. The details are really, really great. I like the little lanterns that you added onto the little bits of wood sticking out. It's fantastic. It's fantasy-tastic. Oh, definitely PlanCo-fied to the fantasy factor, and I absolutely love it. Let's quick look at these builds at nighttime. Those lanterns are looking great. Love the way that looks there. Ooh, backside's amazing. And what do we got going on here? Lucky dudes also looking pretty good here. Now, in the fantasy era, we don't really have a lot of light. It shouldn't be, there's no neon signs or anything like that. So the lighting should be pretty soft, pretty subtle, gentle, and it is. I feel like everybody did a pretty good job of keeping it modest, but also, you know, lighting it up. It looks great. The pirate over here is pretty nice too. Just the windows like that, almost looks like a pirate ship. Looking great. Wow, that is nice. Look, the colors up there. I haven't even looked at the Lockjaw's area at night. All right, this is shaping up. A pretty hefty episode here today, ladies and gentlemen, covering the whole central area of fantasy, pretty much filling in all the in-between and middle stuff leading into the pirate area. It's really going to come together when we get this from Augie, so hopefully we get that soon, and then I can come back here, put that in. I'd really like to see the entrance there, but we're going to work our way, and from the top down, we should generally end up filling up this side and then this side. But there's a lot of really good builds in both today's episode, but then ones that I'm looking forward to, like the Princess Amelie Castle. I think my most anticipated one is going to be the Missy Goods Castle. Who is assigned to this one? Missy Station F15. Crazy Girl Nina, that is right. And for those who, if I remember correctly, Crazy Girl did this one. Well, I guess I can see. Crazy Girl won the contest, the centerpiece contest with little Geppettos, Gelateria. It's incredible. This might be like one of the best builds in the entire park. It's incredible. And if Crazy Girl does anything remotely close to that for Missy Goods, oh boy, my my anticipation factor is through the roof on that one. Always love Missy Goods. I actually did a Missy Goods build of my own, and yeah, it's always been close to, dear to my heart, that character in this universe. Okay, well, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. We ended up getting in 5 or 6 builds, and last but not least, I just got to get your sign in, and that should conclude the episode. 5 or 6. I'm looking at my recording. It says an hour. With editing, we should hopefully hit just under. I know you guys tend to enjoy these longer videos going into detail, so I'm trying my best to do that each and every time going forward. So there it is. All right, we're just going to keep on keeping on. And as of right now, we now have 15% placed in. We have a long way to go. And I think for the next one, we actually have, well, depending on how these are released, probably better that I do Christmas Village more towards Christmas. But we do have about 10 or so Christmas Village buildings ready. But I think by the time this video releases, we're pretty early into December. So maybe we can go check out something else. Pirate, spooky, tiki, something else. I'll figure it out, but I want to try to check out Christmas Village and build as much of that Christmas Village as possible, more towards Christmas time. And for now, we'll just keep bouncing around. We did a little bit of everything so far. Adventure, Western, sci-fi, fantasy. Maybe we should hit up spooky next, or tiki. Tiki in the back there. Cool. Well, there it is, everybody. That's going to conclude the fantasy episode. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye now.